In this video, I'm going to discuss the offhand thumb flick, and in that discussion, I'm going to try to explain why you may or may not benefit from the presence of one in your shot, and how exactly you might benefit. First, let's take a look at some examples of pro players who use their offhand when they shoot the ball, and how the thumb flick improves their shots. The first player I want to show is Kyrie Irving. His thumb flick is about as clear as it gets. What is interesting about Kyrie's thumb flick is that it takes place so close in time to his release. As you can see here, his thumb flicks as the ball has already lost contact with his shooting hand palm. This means that the release of the ball happens just momentarily after, making the flick an undeniably integral part of his shot. Kyrie's thumb flick is also quite a violent movement, suggesting that there is a significant transfer of force into the shot. You can see that it's both the rotation in his wrist and the actual flick of the thumb relative to the hand that causes the thumb flick. In my opinion, this kind of thumb flick is in its own category, a little separate from that of a player like Steph Curry. If we look at Curry's thumb flick, we can see that the input of energy is different. To me, it looks like Curry's thumb flick is less about generating power when compared to Kyrie's. Instead, I think it plays a major role in guiding the ball towards the basket and keeping Curry's shot straight. This is not to say that the thumb flick adds no power, as I'm sure that it does, but because it does not move with the same force that Kyrie's thumb appears to, I don't think it is able to add as much power as Kyrie's thumb does. In a weird way, this makes sense. Although Curry has more range and more consistency as a three-point shooter than Kyrie, Kyrie is far more capable of hitting high difficulty shots from three, particularly when fading away and shooting in a two-motion rhythm. When was the last time you saw Curry hit a true fadeaway, two-motion, late-release timing shot? The answer is never, because Curry just doesn't take those shots. He always uses early release timing and one motion, relying on his ability to speed up his shot to get it off under heavy pressure. This means that Curry can rely less on his offhand to provide the power necessary to hit shots from 28 feet and further, as his legs are always there to help him via early release timing. Kyrie, on the other hand, has a penchant for taking and making heavily contested fadeaways from deep range, and when he shoots these shots, he does so with late release timing, meaning that there is essentially no transfer of power from his legs to the ball. He shoots these shots entirely with the strength of his arms and shoulders. I believe this is the reason why Kyrie's offhand thumb appears to add a lot of power in his shot. If it didn't, and Kyrie had to shoot these shots truly single-handed, he just wouldn't have the power necessary to reach the rim consistently, especially because he isn't a humongous player like LeBron, or even Kobe, who had several inches and tens of pounds on Kyrie. With the thumb flick, however, Kyrie has perhaps an extra 20 to 30% more power in his shot. Because he grew up shooting like this, he was able to adjust the movement of his shooting hand to ensure that he shot the ball consistently straight despite the large input from his offhand. The extra power from his offhand is therefore what has enabled him to shoot from distance in a more classical style, despite his relatively small size compared to the rest of the NBA. I promise you, if you're under 6 feet tall and try to shoot a two-motion shot from NBA three-point range, you will struggle to reach the rim. Kyrie isn't under 6 feet, but hopefully you can still see my point here, that the thumb flick is a potential remedy for a lack of strength in undersized players. Ideally, these examples have convinced you of the possible dual purpose of the thumb flick. Curry really does exemplify the dual usage in his shot, using the thumb flick both for added power and directional consistency. Kyrie Irving seems to exist towards the extreme end of the added power spectrum when it comes to offhand input. But because of this, he's a great example of how it's still possible to shoot consistently with a lot of movement and input from your offhand. Even a discussion of potentially adding a thumb flick to your shot seems radical, given the long history of coaches purposefully eliminating this feature from young basketball players' techniques.
If you're shooting it with your thumb, you will never be a consistent shooter.
I'm still going to be cautious here and say that if you've never naturally exhibited a thumb flick, and you've never struggled to shoot the ball, then there is no reason for you to need to complicate your shot by adding a thumb flick. With that being said, Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving are two examples of great shooters who likely benefit from having a thumb flick in their shot. And there are many others that I could go into, particularly in the younger, rising generations of the game, although not necessarily just in this coming generation, as shown by ex-players like Ray Allen. At the very least, it's logical that having input from your offhand would increase your range, and therefore your ability to shoot from deep. For me, this suggests that if you're around a point guard's height or smaller, say 6'3" or below, having a thumb flick might be the solution to range issues that you could be experiencing, as long as you've already mastered the more basic techniques like early release timing. I know that the thumb flick has certainly helped me to develop some shooting range despite my smaller stature, and I also have been able to develop consistency as a shooter despite only playing the game for 3 years, and despite always having used a thumb flick. If you feel like you need further help with this technique, then make sure you follow me on Instagram, where I post the details of my own journey with my shooting, and help my followers to improve their own shots. Finally, while I am able to see how having a thumb flick could help you to shoot, I'm of course going to concede that there's no way to say definitively that it will help you, because there simply isn't the data out there to back that up. At this point, it's a case of trying things out and seeing if things work for you. Maybe the thumb flick doesn't work for you, and that's fine. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.